Hello, hello. Thank you so much for popping on to our live today where we talk all about how to prepare mentally for a natural birth. So, as a lot of you guys know, because a lot of you guys are mamas with Natural Birth Co., we prepare three main pillars for a natural birth. We prepare our body physically, we prepare our mind mentally, and we prepare our partners. So, these are the three essential components to prepare for a natural birth, we believe, and that's what we use throughout all our services is to prepare one of those three things, or sometimes two, if we're lucky. So yes, today we're going to go all into the mental preparation for a natural birth. Last week we went through the physical preparation, which I really encourage you watch that as well. It doesn't have to be in any sort of order. You can always listen to it later. And then this week we're talking about the mental preparation. So I actually have such a huge, I'm quite into, how am I going to phrase this? Sorry, I should have thought this really, but I have a huge interest in the mind, how the mind works, how our mind and our thoughts can have a physical and visceral response on our body, on our hormones, how something as simple as a thought can completely change our brain chemistry and therefore our hormonal release and manifest in these physical symptoms in our body. And I just think the whole concept is so fascinating. So I do find a lot of interest and joy in discussing the mental preparation for birth. And I often say in my birth workshop that birth is much more of a mental game a lot of the time than a physical game. So we do put a really high priority on the mental preparation of your birth. Yes, for having a natural labor. So let's get into it. Now, if our mental game is at 100% during your birth process, so this can, one, help us remain calm during labor, right? Calmness in labor is amazing for so many reasons, but let's just look at it from this perspective as, you know, the joy of being calm through labor rather than flipping the fuck out, right? The next is that we are able to stay in our reptilian brain when we are mentally prepared for a natural birth experience. So what that is that we have our beautiful frontal lobe mammalian brain at the front. That's what allows us to make decisions. That's what allows us to analyze things and be logical when we look at things. And that's what helps us, gives us a concept of time. This is what really differentiates us from a lot of animals, is the fact that we have this frontal lobe and we're able to logically look at things a lot better. However, when it comes to birth, birth is the most intuitive, animalistic, primal thing that you will do. So it is not a frontal lobe task. Birth is very much a reptilian brain task at the back. So it's our very primal brain. It's our brain of intuition. It's our brain of the present moment. And to be in this brain, we don't want to be making logical decisions. We don't want to be analyzing things. We don't want to be in the concept of time. We don't want to be knowing, oh my gosh, my contractions are 3 minutes apart. They are going for 2 minutes. I have been in labor for 8 hours. Amy said that that means a stalled labor, which isn't the case, by the way. I just made that up. But we don't want to be in this concept of analyzing time. So yes, when we are 100% prepared for our mental game of birth and we are in the fucking zone during birth, then this really allows us to stay in our reptilian brain. What this then allows is our hormonal regulation to really run efficiently. So we're getting all the beautiful birth hormones that we get, including oxytocin, beta endorphins, flowing at a really efficient and regulated rate as it should. So we get these really great waves and troughs throughout labor, and then that is replicated in our contractions as well. So that then creates this really beautiful progressive labor where the cervix opens, where the baby descends through the pelvis when we're getting these really great, efficient, regulated contractions. Babies is able to cope with it really well. They don't get stressed. You don't get stressed. That's what creates a really beautifully progressive labor, is when we can have a beautiful hormonal regulation, and that happens in our reptilian brain. What also happens in our reptilian brain is that we're able to move intuitively. So often when we are in the present moment, we are calm. We are not worried about the future. We're not sad about the past. We're just in the present moment, feeling the sensations in the body during birth. your body will tell you what to do. So one of the dads actually analyzed my birth workshop at the end of one of our private workshops once, and he's like, so pretty much in this workshop all you teach us is to how to cut the shit from the outside and just listen and trust in our bodies. And I was like, precisely, you just explained my workshop so well in one sentence. Literally, you need to be able to shut out the outside world, shut out the, the midwives, the fear, the doctors, the concept of I should be doing this, I should be doing that, any questions, any logical thinking, and just be in the moment and feel what our body is telling us to do. Your baby will nuzzle up on a little bit of bone and be able to indicate to you, oh, for some reason I want to take a big lunge to the right, or I want to crook my hip to the left, or I want to do this movement, do that movement. And your body will intuitively tell you that when we listen and when we're present. If we're too busy up here thinking about all the things that AIM said that we should be doing, then you're going to be not able to have the capacity to listen to what your body is telling you to do. So that's another thing. If our mental game's on point and we're prepared and we're aware of our mental game during birth, we're able to move intuitively to create space in the pelvis for baby to move through. We're also able to feel empowered and trusting throughout the process of birth. So this is a really important thing that we're going to delve deeper into, but to be empowered and trusting of the process of birth is imperative. We're able to feel the amazing connection with our partner and especially our baby when we're in this beautiful mental state during the birth experience. And this is hugely induced by your natural hormonal production. When your hormones are running as they naturally should, we get these beautiful surges of natural birth hormones that create these epic connections. So this is things like prolactin and oxytocin especially. They create this really beautiful love and connection bond while also creating this amazing maternal nurturing bond with your baby with the prolactin as well. So when we're in a nice calm space and we're mentally prepared, we are able to really induce this beautiful connection. And a big thing that my mamas always report after the birth is because not only they've had, the beautiful natural birthing hormones, but also their partners have been so prepared and confident to support them and do that in labor. They get this epic connection with their partner as well. The act of their partner being there to support them, to advocate for them, to just put so much effort into the experience of birth is such a beautifully connecting experience and is really amazing for relationships. So that's always really nice to see as well. With the effective mental preparation, we're able to experience pain without suffering. This is such an interesting concept, right? And we'll go deeper, but pain is pain. When we resist it, we create a suffering experience, which is negative. Pain isn't positive nor negative. Pain is just pain. When we go for a run or when we lift heavy squats or something, we experience pain in our legs, and that's not a bad thing. If anything, that's a good thing. And then when you cut your finger off, that is pain, and that's a negative thing because that's not meant to happen. So pain is just pain, and we need to get out of our heads that pain is a bad thing, and we need to not resist it. We need to not run away with it, and we'll go deeper into this. But if we can pain cross with acceptance is just pain, which is what labor should be, right? So, yes, we're able to experience pain without suffering. With the correct mental preparation, we're able to feel, we're able to look back on our birth experience with satisfaction, power, confidence, and calm, which is really just the goal. The thing that I've found to be the biggest difference between women having what would seemingly be a traumatic birth experience as described by then, as opposed to an experience that they feel really satisfied and empowered by, is the fact that they are calm and in control during the whole process of birth. We don't want to feel that frantic vibe. We don't want to feel that stress. We don't want to feel disrespected. We don't want to feel coerced. That is what leads to traumatic birth. What leads to a really empowering birth is, amongst making your own decisions, which is a whole other podcast, but really having trust in the process of birth and being able to remain calm throughout the process of birth. So we're huge advocates for that, because no matter what happens in your birth experience, if you can remain calm, even if even if you do end up having to go for an emergency cesarean section and you can remain super calm throughout that process, you can have an emergency cesarean section and have that not be traumatic. And we want to do what we can to avoid that majority of the time, which is amazing. But sometimes there's not things that we can do to avoid that. And still having a non-traumatic, satisfying, confident, empowering birth experience is still the main goal at the end of the day. Yes, amazing. So we can have all those things if we are 100% on our mental game. So what I believe is required to mentally prepare for birth is to learn how to cope with pain and labor, which is just huge. And we're going to go deep into that. Build trust and confidence in your body to birth naturally. Reconnect and fine tune with your intuition. So that's 3 things there to build your mental game for birth. So learn how to cope with pain and labor, build trust and confidence in your body. Number 2, reconnect and fine tune into your intuition. Number 3. Okay, let's break these 3 down because these 3, they kind of intertwine as well, but kind of don't at the same time. So how to cope with pain in labor. Now, I feel like this is kind of what I'm known for now. It's, we obviously have a whole workshop on teaching you exactly how to cope with pain in labor. It is such a huge concept to birth, and it's definitely not fixated on enough. There are so many different approaches, and I feel like it's important to kind of be around all of them and figure out what's really suited for you as an individual, because 2 different individuals will cope with pain differently, and it's important to have a few different approaches. For example, not knocking hypnobirthing at all, but they use, a lot of affirmations and breathing techniques, etc. And for some women, those techniques don't really cut the mustard. So they get the actual birth experience, and none of those techniques work for them. And then they're like, oh shit, what do I do now? Like, I'm not coping with pain in labor, which is a massive aspect to be able to have a natural birth experience, is to cope with pain in labor. So I feel having a whole bunch of tools in the tool belt to be able to pull upon one by one to find which best suit you, and better yet, even figuring out that before birth, which best suit you, is really essential. So when we explore what happens, when we explore how do you cope with pain in labor, what's really important is pre-birth is push yourself to your edge of tolerance. Okay, when you are pushed to your edge of tolerance, what happens? Now, your edge of tolerance, if you can imagine, you're working out at the gym, right? And you've got, let's say just like a squat bar or something on your back, and you're doing squats up and down. And you get to that point where you physically cannot do anymore. Your legs are just burning and you cannot do anymore. And you stop. And you've pushed yourself hard. You've made yourself uncomfortable. Okay, that's one thing, is being able to get through that discomfort. When you cannot physically do anymore and you stop, what would happen if you had to? If you had to keep squatting, you had to keep doing that physical endurance that the body was asking for. So, for example, with a labor contraction, you will get pushed to that edge of tolerance and you do not have any control in stopping there. That contraction is going to keep going and going and going past your edge of tolerance. What happens there is how you cope with pain in labor. What happens there is so important to know. And most of us don't know. Most of us don't push past that edge of tolerance ever, which, fair. We live in this awesomely comfortable world where we, are cold and put a blanket on. We're hot and we drink a glass of cold water. Like, we are not having to be uncomfortable barely ever, let alone be pushed to that edge of tolerance. So I feel it's really important in pregnancy to discover and explore that edge of tolerance. What happens for you? What thoughts pop up? I can't do this. I'm not strong enough for this. I'm not resilient enough for this. This is silly. This is wrong. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with this process of birth, or whatever it is that you're going through, in obviously the circumstance we're talking about is birth. How do you react in that moment? Okay, and then we actually explore 7 practical strategies to be able to push past that edge of tolerance to be able to cope in that moment. So, those 7 practical strategies we're going to go through today, and I'm going to tell you what they are. So, 1, diaphragmatic breathing. 4 counts in, 8 counts out. This is what, pardon me, brings us into our parasympathetic nervous state. This is what brings us into our state of rest, relaxation, where all the beautiful hormones are flowing, efficient hormonal circulation, efficient blood volume circulation, all the beautiful calming hormones are pumping through the body, adrenaline's not present. This is a beautiful state to be in for labor. So this is the breath that we do during contractions, is our diaphragmatic breathing. So that's number 1 of the 7 practical techniques to cope with pain in labor. Number 2 is using this diaphragmatic breath as a distraction, and we talk about different ways to do that. Using this diaphragmatic breath as a surrendering tool. So what I mean by surrendering is going into that concept of pain plus resistance equals suffering. Pain plus acceptance equals pain. So what I mean by that surrendering is accept the pain for what it is. Allow the labor contraction to come and go, come and go. Don't resist it. Don't be afraid of it. Know that it's birthing your baby. Know that this is the natural progression of your labor. This is how it's meant to feel. Knowing that this is what we call a physiological pain. So this pain is meant to be there. This is natural. This is like when you go for a big run the next day, your legs are sore, and that's a normal response. We don't get upset about it. We don't get stressed about it. We don't get frantic about it. We accept that sensation for what it is in the legs. We know we've just got sore muscles because we worked out the next day. That's normal. That's meant to be there. That's physiological. As opposed to if we kicked our toe for some reason and that was super duper painful. I don't know about you guys, but I hate stubbing my toe. And that's a pain that is not meant to be there. That's a pathological pain. So, we might bleed, we might realize, oh, cool, we are getting these spikes of adrenaline to be able to fix the pain, to be able to stop the bleeding, to be able to apply ice if we need to elevate it and rest it if we need to. We're in this fixing mode of fixing the pain. We're getting rid of the pain and we feel negative towards it. We're thinking about it. It's occupying our mind, as opposed to if we just had sore legs from going for a run. This is the difference of the physiological and pathological pain. And when we think of labor pain, when women go through labor pain, because it's a pain that they don't experience often, and because it's a pain that they're definitely not used to, it triggers this pathological pain response, especially if we're in our frontal lobe, which majority of us aren't that good at getting out of our frontal lobe, me included, no judgment there. So using the diaphragmatic breath as a tool to be able to surrender and accept that contraction pain as just pain. We're not resisting it. The 4th technique is the comb technique, which is literally a hair comb, squeezing it into the palm. The 5th technique is relaxing the body and the face. So when we're feeling pain, rather than clenching the fist, clenching the shoulders, clenching the face, we're allowing ourselves to relax, relax, relax. Allow the muscles to let go, allow tension to be released. And this overall reduces the intensity of the pain that you're feeling in your contraction. The 6th one is affirmations. Affirmations are a really effective tool for coping with pain in labor, but also a really effective tool for the 7th and last technique, which is changing pain perception. So that goes hand in hand with the whole diagnosing labor pain as a physiological pain and really driving that deep into our souls. That motto, right, is that pain is progress in labor. Pain is meant to be there in labor. So it's been this interesting transition of labor and birth used to be in the community with the midwife, which was essentially back then the wise woman of the town who had been to, hundreds of births, and they would be surrounded by their sisters and their mothers, and pain would be, labor would be this thing that you've seen before. You've seen your sisters go through this before, and it would be somewhat normal. Whereas these days, as birth has transitioned into a hospital setting, where hospitals are where sick people go, and sick people experiencing pain often means a sign of infection, or often means a pressure sore, often means something negative, something pathological, not meant to be there. It has brought this concept into birth that pain should be taken away. Pain is negative. The woman shouldn't have to go through this pain. And the realization and the concept of the pain being a very normal process of natural birth has almost just disappeared. So it's a really interesting concept, and we're not going to go deep into this on this current podcast today. But pain is a really essential part of birth in the whole initiation into motherhood as well. And I know back on my podcast with Brittany Sharp McCollum, where we talk about the transition phase of labor. Transition, which is essentially a massive overwhelm of pain, does a lot to the woman's psyche. It does a lot to the whole shedding of the ego and the shedding of the identity and full release of, this woman that you are pre-baby into this new version of yourself that you're transitioning into as a mother. So I actually feel that, pain is a really essential part of birth, and just simply taking it away, even if you were to have a normal natural labor experience, I think it'd be interesting to see, what maybe the hormonal difference, etc., are in that simple process of taking the pain away. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. So changing the pain perception. So changing the pain perception is getting into this deep state of mind of not fearing the pain, not resisting a pain, but accepting it to be there. So that all comes under the umbrella of how to cope with pain in labor. Those 7 techniques is how we prepare for that concept of mental preparation. The second aspect of preparing the mind for birth is building trust and confidence in your body to birth naturally. Now, this one we often need to go quite introspective. And as I said, sorry if this podcast is coming across a little bit woohoo, but the mind is pretty fucking woohoo in the first place, right? Like the process of our mind and thoughts and how it manifests into physical sensations is just amazing. So I do just invite you to be a little bit open-minded when we're talking about these concepts. But building trust and confidence in your body to birth naturally. Go introspective here, and you might not know this straight away. You might think initially, I know my body can birth. But do you really? Do you really, deep at your core, have full trust in your body to birth naturally? How we can kind of get down to the bottom of this, okay? Often, your mum especially, but definitely your sisters and your friends around you, how their births have gone can have a huge impact on you and how you perceive your labor experience. How you perceive your birth experience. If they've had a hard time laboring, if they, said things maybe like, I felt like I was getting torn in half. If they, had these stalls in labor where they went for 30, 40 hours, the cervix never opened, baby never moved down. They ended up in emergency cesarean sections. Maybe they ended up with pelvic floor issues because of instrumental births, etc. Has that created a negative experience for them that, they've maybe confided in you in, which is amazing, but has stemmed this embedded fear in you towards birth? And I really invite you to explore that, especially if it's your mama. That can have a really deep-seated effect on your perception towards birth. So I invite you to inspect that and figure out, do I take those beliefs with me into my experience, and do I kind of take that into the concept of me being able to birth naturally. So this can often be really great to explore through meditation as well. Yeah, to figure that out and think about it and journal about it. Journal about, okay, my mum had this experience, my friends had this experience, but then there was this good experience over here. What do I feel true for me? Yeah, and how does that work for you? And again, I'm always here as a bit of a soundboard if you want to come back and forth about this stuff, because it can be really tricky to nut down and it can be tricky to isolate this idea for you of how you feel to birth. But then once you figure out how do you truly feel about birth, it's going to be either maintaining this confidence and trust in your body to birth or changing that, which is going to take a lot of affirmation work, a lot of meditation, a lot of journaling. And if you're this type, maybe a lot of logical research. Okay, what is the percentage of normal vaginal births in, maybe countries that aren't fully access to hospitals and medical help and all sorts of things? Can you do some research in, if you're afraid of the cervix not opening? Okay, what can I do to mitigate this risk? What can I do to mitigate this risk of whatever the people have had negative experiences about me, so that I know entering this birth, okay, cool, I'm not putting myself in that category because I've prepared around that to avoid having that experience completely. So I know that's not going to happen for me. Or can I actually look, okay, there was that negative experience that was really random and unfortunate, but what are the actual stats? Does that only happen in 0.3% of the population? Because if that's the case, I need to focus on the 99.7% of the population that isn't experiencing that, and that's probably going to be me. So trying to reframe this in different ways. So build trust and confidence in your body to birth naturally. And I know one of our mamas wrote in a question today about tips on how to cope mentally with your first birth, not knowing what to expect. Now, Ash, if you're here on the live, let me know, because I know you're the one that popped this question in, and this is a question that I would receive so often from mamas. And what I think that truly comes down to is that you are never going to know what to expect with your first babe. Like, there is no way that anyone can explain to you or prepare you for this first birth experience. No one in any way can articulate what birth is going to be like. It's just impossible. It's one of those things that you need to experience. So how we can cope mentally and how we can know that we're going to be okay during birth, even though we don't know what to expect, I believe, is having full trust and faith in the process of birth. Yes, you don't know what it's going to feel like. Yes, you don't know how your body's going to go or how you're mentally going to cope with the complete confidence that you've done it before. But if you can have the complete confidence that no matter what comes my way throughout this birth, I know that I'm going to be okay. I know that my body's going to be able to birth this baby, and I know this is what my body is built to do. That is what can really help you enter into your birth experience with complete confidence and trust, even though, yeah, I'm going to be very shocked with how the labor contractions feel. I'm going to be very shocked with, how long labor is going to go. I have no idea. I could be in there for 40 hours. But you know what? You're going to be okay, even if your birth, even if it's more intense than you can imagine, even if it's longer than you could even imagine, you are going to be okay because your body is meant to birth. You and your baby are meant to work together to birth this baby. Every contraction brings you closer. All those sorts of things, all those sorts of affirmations, all those sorts of deep-seated beliefs is what's really going to show their either beautiful or ugly heads in the lead up and during your birth experience. So I personally feel that it's not trying to grasp what to expect. You need to surrender. I don't know what's going to happen. I have zero control over getting my head around what's going to happen with this birth. But what I do know is that I have the strength, resilience, and endurance to be able to cope with this labor. And what I do know is that my body is meant to birth naturally. Having that complete trust in yourself and your body, I feel, is the true answer to that question on how to cope mentally. And I feel that does come into building trust and confidence in your body to birth naturally. Cool. So that's number 2 under the umbrella of how to prepare for mentally for a natural birth. Now, number 3, reconnect and fine tune into your intuition. So when it comes down to it, we really need to be able to, when it comes to coping mentally during labor, as I was saying before, we want to get out of our logical mind into our reptilian brain. To stay out of our logical mind, we don't want concepts of time in the birth space. We don't want people asking us questions. We don't want people directing us. We don't want, things like the lights on bright. We don't want small talk conversation around us. All those things are going to bring us out of our reptilian brain into our frontal lobe, right? So all those things that I just listed there, if that feels true for you, put that all in your birth plan and talk to your birth partner about not doing those things, because that's a great tip. But when we're in our reptilian brain is when we can connect to our intuition. This is when there's no concept of time and when we just move our body intuitively and we're in the present moment, right? So when we're in this space, this is what can really allow us to, one, not freak out with the length of labor and freak out with the intensity of contractions. But 2, the concept of birth, like, it's so funny. We pretend like we know. We don't fucking know, right? Us midwives, obstetric doctors, women, we don't know about birth. All of it is so intuitive. All of it is so magical. We pretend like we know, but really we don't know. We don't know what starts labor. We don't know why some women have certain contraction patterns, why some women have other contraction patterns. We don't know anything about the cervix. We don't know anything about the progress of birth and why some women don't progress and why some women do. At the end of the day, we're just putting out fires. We're just trying our best to recognize when something's negative happening and trying to stop that. But at the end of the day, we don't know. So when it comes to trying to logically understand birth, we need to stop trying to logicize something that is so illogical. You're literally growing a human inside your belly amazingly, and then your whole body is morphing around your baby to be able to let it out. It is the most magical thing ever, and we need to not try to logicize it in our mind. We need to just trust in the process of birth and surrender to the experience of birth and let birth happen. And I think this can be what really sometimes, I'm tangenting. When we're in birth and we try to actually think about it in the moment, wait a minute, how the heck is this 4-kilo baby meant to get out of my pelvis? This can create a lot of stress and franticness in the birth experience. However, if we can descend into our intuition, be present, and be trusting in the process of birth, this is what allows us to just be relaxed, be calm, allow the hormones to flow efficiently, allows contractions to flow efficiently, and allows our body to move intuitively to be able to nuzzle this baby out. So reconnect and fine tune to our intuition. So movement is the best way to do this. I find in pregnancy, and we do this constantly throughout our pregnancy yoga practice, which is just moving intuitively. So yes, I might guide you into, say, a cat-cow, for example, which is when we're in all fours and you're arching and then rounding the spine. But then if, for example, you go to round the spine and that just feels really compressed and really awkward and it hurts your ribs and you can feel Bubby's hands pushing up into the ribs, or hopefully feet more so, then avoid that. Then don't do that move. Just go from, say, arching to neutral, arching to neutral. If you go to arch and you're feeling, it's feeling really great. You're feeling a beautiful stretch throughout the front of the body. You're feeling baby create space. You're feeling space being created in the uterus. Then lean into that. Let that arch linger for longer. Let yourself kind of roll into that arch and come into some little snake type movements and lean into that intuitive goodness of what that feels like. And then throughout this movement practice, this can even be at home, where you're just moving in some sort of ways, try to be really present and aware of your body and how it feels. We're not in thoughts, we're not in our frontal lobe. We're in our reptilian brain. Often closing the eyes can be really helpful. And feel the body. What is it telling you? Where is it telling you to go? Do that. Where is it telling you to not go? Don't do that. And this strengthens not only the connection between you being able to hear what your body's telling you, but then also strengthens the connection to your intuition through you listening to that and doing the things that are feeling good. Now, something I want to clarify here before we move any further is that sometimes we do feel discomfort that feels good. For example, if something like, say if you're doing that arch and you're feeling like a stretchiness along here, quite often that's us stretching our round ligaments that are tight. Now, that's an example of something that's really important to stretch out. And even though it's uncomfortable, that's like a good discomfort. You know, that's something we need to lean into more and follow our intuition in, like, oh yeah, that's something that's uncomfortably progressive for us, rather than something that's a bit more, say, bone crunchy or compressive to baby or the belly, compressive to the lungs. They're more of the negative discomforts that we don't want to lean into. So that's just like a good discrepancy to recognize. We don't want to run away from pain and discomfort, but we don't want to have that essentially pathological pain or discomfort as well. So yeah, movement's the best way to tune into your intuition. Practice quiet, intuitive movement. Allow this a time to connect with your body and connect with your intuition and connect with your baby. This can be a really beautiful moment. Feel what your body wants, lean into that. And switching off the surrounding noises around you. So trying not to do this, like, you know, when you're watching TV at the same time, and maybe not even when you're having conversations at the same time. Just let these surrounds around you be quiet, be calm, be just you, be a bit of solitude, be a bit of time to, just complete no distractions from your body, your baby, and your intuition. So I'm going to wrap this up with a quick clarification of everything we've just talked about today. So I know it can come across a little bit wishy-washy, so I hope that maybe it wasn't too bad opening your mind to some of these concepts to grasp what we're talking about. The act of preparing your mind for birth is a pretty intuitive, introspective time of life to get really deep on these things. And it's really actually amazing to see a lot of my mamas that come through our NVC community. They're, you know, not necessarily hippie-ish or intuitive or wishy-washy or anything like that. And then pregnancy can be a beautiful time to start exploring some of these ideas, as it's such an intuitive, natural time anyway. So yes, how to cope with pain and labor. Number one, build trust and confidence in your body to birth naturally, and reconnect and fine-tune into your intuition. These are the 3 ways to build that mental preparation for your birth experience. And it is absolutely essential, almost highest priority, to focus on your mental preparation for birth if you want to have a natural birth experience. Let me know if you have any questions, always here. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining.